Hello, everyone. Starting things a little earlier this Sunday morning because today we are going to do some hands-on things. Last week we were a little bit short in our development section, and this week I want to make up for that. So today we are going to be talking about the power of play and how that affects our business world. For the application side of things, we're going to be looking at tolerance. And I don't necessarily mean of people, I mean of payments. So a little bit funky. And then in the development section, we're going to make an extension from scratch that does something that uses a complicated but powerful engine called record and field refs because of a couple of questions that I've gotten from different people. So let's get started. Alrighty. So, first, a little tiny bit of housekeeping. As folks may have noticed, I was off last week. Summer schedule is going to be a little sporadic, partly because of vacations, partly because of I'm going to be at Days of Knowledge, which is in just a few weeks in Denmark, and I'll be on stage the day before and traveling home, so I'm not sure if I will podcast the weekend of that event. Might do a little one, just talking about what was there, what was the value of it, and all that sort of thing. And hopefully in person I will get some Danes to help me make sure that I've got my pronunciation of the city name correct. I pronounced it with my Swedish brain, and Danes laughed a fair bit. So if you haven't seen how it is written, Odense, and my brain went, okay, well, let's start with Swedish as our baseline, so Urdense. And yeah, that's a lot more syllables than the Danes would use for the place. Urdense, I believe, is a lot closer of a pronunciation. The D is gone. It's a little bit of a hiccup in the middle of the at the beginning. So, fun things you learn about places. I'm not throwing stones. I'm from a place in Massachusetts where there's, I think, 4 or 5 syllables written in the name, and you pronounce 2 of them. So, it's fine. So Days of Knowledge, that's going to be fun. I may end up doing, because I am preparing a 45-minute talk for that event, I may end up doing that as a follow-up live broadcast later in the summer, redoing that conference talk for just general consumption to the world. So if you can't make it, don't stress too bad. My content, I will probably remake it for the online world. I am not using that same topic or guidelines for talking to other events this year, so it won't be a repeat for anyone. And that's going to be all about testability and how you can use it in different parts of the business process than you might know. So yeah, so we'll see what the summer schedule holds. It'll be a little sporadic. I'm going to probably try, for those of you who aren't aware, this is live. I live stream this on a Sunday morning, my time, before the fam gets up and all that sort of fun stuff, and just talk through things, which is why it's not quite, a carefully edited, designed production. So I may end up pre-recording a few bits and pieces here and there over the summer, and then it might get a little weird in the fall because Spare-Brained Ideas as a company is growing still beyond my intention or expectations. So we are going from a completely virtual company to having an office this fall. We'll see how that all works out. It means moving my home office out of my home. That's going to be weird. Anyways, so enough housekeeping on that one. A small related sort of thing. I appeared on another podcast recently. Mark Smith runs the MVP podcast for the business application space, nz365guy.com. You will find that. And that was a fun chat. It was a good little short format. I say short, yeah, I think it was 20 to 30 minutes all told. So it was a nice conversation. I'm hopeful if people poke him that maybe we can do more in that series because it was a lot of fun and I think people enjoyed. Another small thing for those of you who follow closely along to what Spare Brain is up to, you will have caught mention of the fact here and there that I was working on another book. That is true. And I mentioned it here and there. It is a book about the APIs in Business Central. For reasons I cannot talk about just yet, it would be better to release that closer to the fall release in September timeframe, so that way it can align with what the Business Central release will be in the fall. And that I don't want to have to update a book within 2 months of publishing it, so it makes all the sense in the world, unfortunately, to delay the release of that from June to about September probably. So the challenge of writing technical books is that it's always a moving target. How much do you want to delay things to try to hit the next version? In this case, it makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons. So we're going to do that. We're gonna delay the book release. Alrighty. Talking about play. I have chatted a little bit before with people in the industry, and you will have caught reference to it here and there, that gaming is something that is important to me and my family. And that comes in lots of different ways. And some of you may be also the types who are playing, any sort of like Counter-Strike games. You're playing the Call of Duty games. I'm not great at first-person shooters, so it's not usually my thing. Once upon a time, I was a real-time strategy nut and would play all of the StarCraft, Command and Conquers, and all those sort of things. But then there's also the wonderful world of tabletop things. There are so many fantastic board games. If you haven't incorporated board games into your family life, let me tell you, it's fantastic. And they're not all adversarial. Many great board games that are out today, which really helps when you're dealing with small kids, are cooperative, like you against the board. Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island, Castle Panic for the real nice collective effort type games. Pandemic, which is a little bit harder to unfortunately in the pandemic board games, once you've discovered the cure, you've won, and well, that's going to be hard to play anymore. But there are so many different ways that gaming actually can spill over into so many other areas of life. For those of you who are familiar with it, I was a World of Warcraft person. I had been a Blizzard fan for a very, very long time. I still have most of the original CDs from when they released Warcraft 2, StarCraft, all the original stuff. So when Warcraft released the big MMO, and it was a huge deal in 2004, 2005 area, you better believe I was right there. And what I didn't expect is how much of an impact that would have on my life. Now, for starters, it meant that I also played far too much. That's the nature of MMOs, is they suck you in and they give you great dopamine hits to make you play more, and they do a good job of it. It's good value for the money usually as well. You end up paying a very small amount of money that if you were to put the same amount of time into, say, going to movies, it would cost you a fortune. So, decent value. But I didn't expect is that it was my first MMO, and I didn't realize what that was going to do to my world. I, being on the spectrum and being kind of fringe kid growing up and all that sort of thing, you don't realize what social skills are underdeveloped. And playing in online spaces, you start doing more and more things with people. And you need to do collaborative efforts. For those who are not familiar with MMOs, many of the times the big online games like that require you to do groups of 5, 10, or even 40 or even more people coordinating their efforts to do big giant undertakings. And usually they require an enormous amount of preparation to do these undertakings as well. So what ended up happening in Warcraft is they had a whole system designed where people could basically form little virtual tribes called guilds. And through various bits and bobs, I ended up being a leader of one of these guilds. And we ended up being north of 100 plus people. And in the same space of talking about books, one of the books that's always been in the back of my mind on a shelf was Business Executive Lessons Learned from Being a World of Warcraft Guild Leader. Why? Because in those virtual spaces, you require people to put huge amounts of time and effort and prep work and practice and skill into doing these complicated team collaborations. And at any single moment in time, they can type a little 6-character command into their keyboard that they just leave. They're gone. That's it. They don't have to ever talk to you again. They can quit in a heartbeat. And that develops your ability to think about retention, engagement, community development, and all sorts of different skills that have to coordinate and collaborate together to make a space interesting and engaging. And I think there's a huge amount of lessons learned from that in spaces like the Dynamics community, where resources are incredibly scarce. Qualified, useful people, there aren't enough of us. And some of the lessons that I learned out of guild leadership, we would have, for example, we weren't one of those big, like, we made the news for our ability to do these brand new content and complicated things. We were not what was considered to be elite. We didn't do the brand new thing the moment it came out. We trailed behind because most of us were parents, we were professionals. We couldn't dedicate the sort of time that some of the folks were able to dedicate to doing these elite moments. So that meant that we weren't the best. And that meant that we weren't always going to do the new stuff, which meant we weren't getting the equivalent in game terms. We weren't getting the best pay for the effort. People weren't getting their best items. So we were in an incredibly resource scarce environment where departing was really easy, poaching was really easy, and we had limited ability to reward people for their efforts. Some of these things, it'd be 25 people going to an event and there's only 10 real notable things to hand out as a result of participating in that event. So you have to learn how to try to cultivate connections between people and make the experience of working together as meaningful and as powerful as the fiscal or financial or whatever have you, the tangible rewards. It became essential to understanding how to motivate and captivate the people around you to work together, and that the working together was the reward. Holy moly. Can you imagine trying to apply some of those lessons to our industry where we're really remote centric these days? The disparity between places is real different. Ooh, it's good stuff. And we did have folks who would leave to go to the elite groups because they wanted the better stuff. They wanted the better pay. And, they had to work longer hours to get into these groups. They had to do all sorts of stuff to prepare. And one of the most fascinating things to me was the people who came back from that. The people who came back from those elite groups realized that what we had created as a community in our little tribe, our little guild, was worth more than getting the loot faster. And so it taught me really early on in my professional career, because I was only 3 or 4 years into Business Central at that point, NAV at the time. I was only a little ways into the industry at that point, but one of the things I learned real quick is same sort of thing applies to our space. You can go to consultative practices that will pay you enormous sums of money, and they will make you work for it. You have to earn that. And a lot of times my experience in the industry of working with places that are capable and willing to pay top dollar they often come with so many unwritten expectations of what you're then willing to sacrifice. Now, my experience with some of those partners are no longer in the industry, so I'm not going to name them or speak about the specifics of them, but I had scenarios where I couldn't be home for important family occasions and was told, because we make scads of money for this particular partner, just buy them something nice. Okay. So one of the things that I learned in guild life, and that translated super easily into the dynamics world, was values have as much importance as the money. You need to be thinking about all the different things that are important to you. If you're watching these podcasts or listening to these podcasts and you're just starting out, you are absolutely going to get offers coming your way that are going to be more than what you make. Wherever you are, your odds are pretty good there's someone out there who's going to be willing to pay you more. But there are so many consequences that are not just about the money. So make sure you have in your head, what do you need and what do you want? Define that in your space, and then be really careful about going above that, because there's trade-offs then that maybe you're not aware of. So, and the important lesson out of that guild life of having people come back to us is something that I think is really important for managers and people running partners in this industry, of you're going to lose people to other environments. That's probably going to happen. People are lured by better shinies. That just happens. Be gracious about it as best you can. Be kind. I mean, that's just a general good life philosophy in general. Be kind. But these things are going to happen to you, and do your best to protect yourself from it. I mean, you don't want someone leaving and taking 20 clients with them. And, there are going to be times where someone leaves because they want to do things in a different way. And when teams break up, sometimes people go with people. That absolutely happens. If you're dealing with a situation, I've worked at partners where one person left and 3 people went with them. Well, they're a tight-knit group. That's a real risk that you also develop if you don't manage your internal culture to support those folks having a community in the larger picture. Um, but be as gracious as you can, because what may end up happening is the person who leaves, they might be being not leaving because they don't like where they are. They might be leaving because of a need unmet. So be kind, be gracious, find out what is the unmet need that has them thinking that somewhere else would be better. It might be type of work, it might just be money. They might have been persuaded by people. And if you're gracious about it and you can address those unmet needs, then it's entirely possible that they may come back to you and say, wow, I went to another place. It was worth a lot more money, but it was awful. I was getting emails and phone calls on a Sunday morning asking me what the status was on a thing that I started working on Friday. This is bonkers. I feel free to tweet at me of, yeah, I've been there. Like some of the higher end partners that I've worked with in the industry, or even some of the higher end customers, it seems like they're under the impression that each of us in our professional capacity have teams of elves that just in the night do these magic things, and that by having a status meeting 2 days later, everything will be done, even if the plan is 5 weeks long. It's very, very strange. So be aware and be mindful that when someone is leaving, it may not be because they're choosing to leave. They might think the grass is greener, but they may get over there and go, "Ooh, it is absolutely not. Can I come back?" And if you get people, if you're kind about it, you work with people about those sort of changes and anticipate that those will happen, especially if you're training new people. You will create an environment and a space where those folks are going to come back and they're going to be your best people, because they know it could be better, maybe, but generally it isn't. So be kind and develop those connections, develop that loyalty. It will absolutely be amazing for you. I honestly have helped even customers go to competitors because I didn't think it was a right fit anymore. And I've had one or two of them come back and go, okay, we get it now. So it applies to customers, employees, everything. Be willing to let things go. And if you're gracious about it, they may go, whoa. I didn't know how much better I had it until I didn't. So there are more bits and bobs around that space that I could probably babble about for another 10-20 minutes. The guild connections that I've developed in that time period still are alive today, even though I haven't played the game in almost, I want to say, I probably stopped in 2009. But it's been over a decade since I've really played that game, and most of those connections, many of them are still alive. And that is the power of doing things together and building community, is it can persist beyond the time and space that you have developed it. So encourage that, foster that. It's good stuff. Okay, well, I think that is a good amount of diving into that. I don't want to go on for a full hour about it. Let me know if you want an extended cut. I can talk about all sorts of fun things. Like, for example, my life in Sweden is only possible because of the fact that I had some of those guild connections. But that's a story for another time. Let me know if you want to hear it. We will instead switch over to talking about some customer things in Business Central. I got the question from someone in a couple of private messages. I got some questions about payments and prepayments and payment tolerance and payment methods. A bunch of different questions came in about that, and I was like, well, I guess that's an area to talk to. So let's talk a little bit about that. And as usual, I will do my best for those of you who are following along in audio rather than seeing this in video. I will try to talk through all the different pieces that we're going to go through today. So for most people, okay, we still have our extension published from last time. So the minute I opened my customer list up, we got our hello world message from the percentage extension. So let's get that out of here. We're going to uninstall that BC extension. Bye-bye. There we go. Okay, so most of you at this point watching or listening to this have set up a customer, and I'm sure you're confident in your ability to do that. And most of you have probably looked at, in the customer card, there is a payments section with a payment terms code. And if you do show more, you go from one little field of a payment terms code to suddenly a whole bunch. We have not only payment terms and payment method, which are pretty common sort of things, but we also get some ones we're going to talk to today, like, for example, prepayment percent and application method. So these are sort of fascinating ideas, and it will help a little bit to dive into what some of these are. Payment terms, if you haven't worked with it before, it's pretty straightforward. What this does, if we open up the payment terms list, it is a list of calculations. And all it's doing in this payment terms system is going, when I create a sales or purchase document, when from the document date, when will it be due? So for example, for those of you who do net 30 or pay immediate or current month, all of those are different calculations you put in here. The demonstration environment has a variety of them. For example, net 30 days, the due date calculation is just 30D, or the first initial that is relevant for the language that you're using. This is language aware date formulas, if you have not used that before. And then there can be things like close of month, CM, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. So if you search around for Business Central date formulas, you will find some explainers on all that. Additionally, in the payment terms setting, there is a discount date calculation and a discount percent column. And the idea behind this is, if you're the kind of company that wants customers to pay faster, even though you give longer terms, you can encourage people to pay quickly with a discount percent. So for example, maybe you have net 30, but you would love for your customers to pay you within 1 week. So you could do a due date calculation of 30D, a discount date calculation of 1W for 1 week, or 7D for 7 days, and do a discount percent of, say, 5%, whatever have you. What'll happen is, when you receive the payment from the customer, is if the payment date in the payment journal or whatever mechanism you're using to receive the payment, if the payment date is within that date calculation, it will accept the lower amount and write up the discount percent as a credit against a, presumably somewhere in the engine, a discount percentage setup. So you can hit a GL account for the discount percent. So that's one thing. Payment method code. This will this drives when your customer pays you. Well, actually, when you post your sales document, if you have a payment method filled out with a balance account number and type or whatever have you. So for example, in our Kronos environment, there's a cash payment method, and they have a balancing account in here for GL account 2910, which, if we look at our preview, is just the cash account. If you put in on the sales order or purchase order, whatever have you, this payment method code, the moment you post the invoice, it will automatically post the matching payment for you. It's pretty much that straightforward. So that can be very valuable when you're doing, for example, payment via credit cards, and you potentially do different setups around that. Let's see, then we also have the idea of application method. Application method is a pretty straightforward idea, as long as you understand that whenever you post invoices or post orders to an invoice in Business Central, it creates a ledger entry of an open invoice waiting to be paid. So if you do 3 orders, one for 100, one for 200, one for 300, and you do those over the course of a month, when you get a payment for 300 from that customer, does that 300 apply to the invoice that was charged for 300, or were they paying for the 100 and 200 from earlier in the month? Well, in the payment engine, by default, I believe, most of the time it selects it as manual. So in payment receipt journal, in the cash receipt journal, you have to choose which invoices is this going to apply to. But many times, if you want, you can switch over the application method to apply to oldest. And what will happen is that whenever you receive payments from this customer, the amount of the payment will be, it'll try to apply that sequentially to the oldest stuff. It'll even do partial payments. So, if you've got a big giant balance with a customer or vendor and you just do a big chunk of funds to them, and you want to apply that across the 10 oldest invoices, apply to oldest could be your friend. So that could be a pretty nice thing. And then there's a whole prepayment percent engine that I wanted to make mention of today as well. We could do a whole deep dive on that for 20 minutes, but because of the way that Business Central had been built from the beginning, the idea was around the standard workflow of you ship the goods and then you invoice, because that was the business process that was dominant at the time. Of you cannot bill a consumer until you've shipped to them. You cannot bill a business until you've shipped to them. If you're doing services and things like that, often you write those up as invoices. There's no shipping. But what do you need? What can you do as an organization when you want to make them pay first before you ship the goods? Well, they added an engine in, I want to say it was version 4 or 5, that added prepayment functionality. And what you can do is, if you set, for example, prepayment percent of 25, when you write up a sales order or sales invoice, I think it's just order. I'll have to look. If you set that prepayment percent to 25 on the customer and create an order for them, or set it manually on the order itself because it's a special, you're ordering it from your supplier and you want a deposit, there is an option in the sales order engine to post a prepayment invoice. And what that will do is it will create a new type of invoice that needs to be paid immediately, and the status of the sales order will change to waiting for prepayment. So that's pretty handy, and you can do that. I have a customer that does that 100% prepayment only, so that can be very valuable. The other thing that is a little bit buried in the system that I wanted to talk to today, because I got the question about it, is on the customer card, in the payment section, in the show more, there's this weird little option called block payment tolerance. And I got the question of, what the heck is that? Like, where is this setting? If you're looking at payment methods, there's nothing in payment methods. There's nothing in payment terms about payment tolerance. What is all that? And even if you go to sales and receivables, in the sales and receivable setups, where you would expect there to be stuff about, payment tolerances and all that sort of thing, it's not in here. So what is this payment tolerance thing? And if you search on it, you're not going to find anything. Yeah, tolerance, nothing. Well, payment tolerance is a funky thing on the general ledger setup. And in the, I believe it's in our general, might be application. Let me take a look here so I'm telling the right things. Okay, yep. In general ledger setup, in the application section, there is these settings for payment tolerances. And that confuses people a little bit, but this is a pretty cool idea. So there's payment discount tolerance and payment tolerance. And this has to do with if your due dates are set automatically by those due date calculations. Maybe you even have those discount due dates and whatnot, but you don't. You want to give a little bit of grace to people that they are. If they miss by a day, that you go, we're not going to chase them for the fact that they took that 2% discount and they missed it by one day. This allows you to configure that in your payment receipt process, I want to give that grace period for the discount tolerance. And then separately, there is a payment tolerance side of things for the percent of which you're willing to allow someone to be off. So if you have one of those types of customers that they hit or miss, sometimes they don't pay to the penny or to the centime or whatever have you, like if they're just off all the time and they're rounding and you don't want to have to chase them for the little bits and bobs, this payment tolerance setting lets you choose what is the percentage of off that you're willing to accept from them, with a setting for a cap to choose what is the maximum that they are allowed to be off by. So, if they've got like a 10% payment tolerance, which would be bonkers, please don't use that level of payment tolerance, but you wanted to cap it at $5 or 10 euros or whatever have you, you could do that. What will happen is when, say, you have a bonkers amount that's like 355 euros and 23.23, and they pay the 355 even, you don't want to necessarily chase them for the 0.23. So when you receive the payment into the system in the payment journal, as long as you mark the document type payment, I have seen people run into that error that they didn't realize how important that document type setting was. As long as it's a document type payment, if you put in 355 and that's within this payment tolerance amount, the system will write off the 0.23 for you and put it to a credit account. And that's what this payment tolerance account setting is here in the payment tolerance posting. So if you've seen payment tolerances around, because there are 2 or 3 places where the term is mentioned but never really clear what's what, that's what's going on there. So, all right. That took a little longer to dive through than I expected, actually, but yeah. So this is why we started a little bit early, because we are going to try, I do say try, we are going to try to accommodate covering a little bit about field refs and record refs for development and how that all can work. So my idea behind what we might want to do is we might want to create a new extension where we're going to support importing sales order lines onto an existing sales order, but customers send us these Excel files or CSV files, whatever have you, and the columns don't always line up. So we want our salespeople to be able to say what columns 1, 2, and 3 are when they import it. Sometimes it's item number, quantity, unit of measure. Sometimes it's just mixed up and that sort of thing, or they get it in different formats from different people, and we want to provide a generic way to import some information into a sales order and allow the person to map the columns. I have not cooked up any code ahead of time or any even files ahead of time, so let's see if we can make this work as a process. I may be biting off more than I can chew. I'm going to try to keep this part to about half an hour, so we're going to go quick as can on this. So the idea behind this is that sales order page, we want to be able to click a button that opens up a page where we can assign to different columns which field we want the data to come in, and then be able to click a button in the ribbon to say import from that file. So the idea behind that then is we need to have a page where we have a list of columns and a list of fields, a list of columns matching to field numbers on the sales line. And that page should be not only a list but have a ribbon button to click, and we are going to keep this relatively simple. So we're going to make a new table real quick. I make heavy use of, for those of you who don't know about this, AZAL DevTools. I make heavy use of this AL file wizard. It is pretty fantastic. So we're going to make a sales order import buffer. Hopefully my voice doesn't get too drowned out by the clacking keyboard. I'm told sometimes it does. So we're just going to make a line number, and then we'll do a column number. Actually, our primary key can be column number because we're going to assign that automatically, and then we need to say what field number. So let's do field number, and this is also going to be an integer, and for visual clarity's sake, we're going to say field name, and we'll give one last bell and whistle, and we'll say skip column. We'll see if that is something we can work with. This is going to be a text. I think 100 will be all right. We'll try it. So there we go. We've created a table with 4 columns. I've got my environment configured to automatically prefix my extension with PTE, because this is going to be a little PTE extension. And we are now going to do a table relation on the field number to something called all object with caption. And we are going to do dot. Oh, no. We need to know. Boy, I almost related us to the wrong thing. We need to relate us to the field dot number. This field table is a virtual table of all the fields in your system. It is a virtual table, so it doesn't exist precisely as a static set of data, but it does mean that it includes all extension fields. And we are going to put a filter on this table relation where the table number is equal to our database our database sales line. I think we can do that. Nope. All right, we have to hard code our numbers. So we are going to have a table relation on field number where table relation equals field dot number, where table number is const 37. So there we are. That gives us our relation, and our field name field is actually going to be a field class of a flow field, and we will give it a calc formula of lookup to the field dot caption, field caption, yep, where the table number is equal to our const of 37, the sales line table, because we can't do the dynamic. Let's see, where table number equals a const of 37, and where the field number is equal to the field of field number. There we go. Okay, so what this will do is it's going to give us the field caption, which is apparently a text 80. So I'm going to update my text to match. And I'm also going to set this field as not editable. Flow fields are not automatically non-editable by default. So there we go. All right, there we go. We got our column numbers, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Great. Let's make a quick page based off of this. And we're going to do a page wizard. And we'll call this sales order import flexible. Sure. And this will be based off of our PTE, sales import buffer. When you're using the new page wizard or anywhere really with IntelliSense, one of the advantages of using your affix, which we talked about in our last session, is that you can use that affix to quickly find your source objects, which is just so fantastic. So strongly recommend it. I'm going to set my usage category on this page to none because I don't want someone to find it via search. I just want them to be able to open this from the sales order. And we are going to say column number, field name, field number, field name, and skip column. So our 4 fields that we created are all going on the page. And there we go. So, great. That created all sorts of fun stuff for us. I don't think we need to do anything else special at this point. Cool. All right, so now with that created, we need to create a new page extension for our friend, the sales order form. Let's see, this will be PTE sales order, so extend sales order. There we go. Now, if I were writing up a specification for this, I would be asking, well, do you just want it on sales orders? Do you want it on sales quotes, sales invoice? Do you need this in purchasing? Blah, blah, blah. We're minimum prototype viable product kind of thing going on right here, and part of that is the time constraint I'm putting myself in. So we are going to do a new action on the sales order that lets us import. AZL DevTools also has a command called show action images to see all of the action icons that you might want to have, and I am going to use the filtering in the action images to find all of my import images and see if there are any that work for me. And honestly, the generic import icon works, so I will right click on that and copy as action. Come back to our page extension, and with an actions section to extend the sales order, we will paste that code into our action here. And we do need to encapsulate that with an area, which I forgot. So we're going to drop that into the processing area, and we'll make sure that our brackets actually line up here. Am I losing my mind? Why? Oh, right. Yeah, we're a page extension. Woohoo! So, yeah, we're not defining a new area. We're adding last to processing. There we go. That makes more sense. Okay, so this is going to be my PTE import action. I'm going to give it a name of caption. We'll call this Flexi Import, just to have something there. We'll give it a tooltip of imports sales lines let's do it from CSV file to keep our sanity today. Import sales lines from CSV files, and then on action, we are going to just run this import table. We're running this import page. We need to open this up, and it needs to know what the destination order is. So here on our sales order extension, we're going to need to pass that page some sort of knowledge of what's the context. We don't have anything in here at the moment to receive that info. So if we go to our page, the SO import flexible thing here, we need a global variable to store what is the reference of the sales order. So let's grab the sales order as a record, sales order. My autocomplete not working on me, so I'll just type it out. Okay, so we are going to create a procedure to set sales order to the new sales order, and we'll fix that in a sec here, and we're going to set sales order equals new sales order. Groovy. So there we go. Excellent. And we're probably complaining because I haven't downloaded symbols. Always download your symbols. Okay. There we go. Great. Oh, duh. And people are probably screaming at their screen. I've called this sales order everywhere, and the record is a sales header. Yep. Okay, so, all right, back in our page extension, we now have the ability to call the page and pass it the sales order. So let's do that. We're going to need a var in our trigger for the on action that is this SO import flexible page type. So we'll do our PTE. There we go. Again, the prefix makes autocomplete on these great. So whenever you're calling a page for the first time, whenever you're doing an on trigger type thing where you're going to open up a page, it is a good idea to always clear it first. Because you want to make sure that it is in a clean state before you try to access it. I don't know if it's still the case. You could potentially, in older versions, if you don't clear a page and you try to run it again, it'll tell you that you can't run a page without clearing it again. So I don't know if that's still the case. I'm not going to worry about it. Sales order import flexible. Now we can access that and call our set sales order procedure of sales order import flexible, and we will pass our rec because we are calling this from a sales order. And we lastly will import flexible run modal. So, and then I think actions will auto update the page afterwards, so we'll just do run modal. Okay, and now there we go. We will, if we were to publish this right now, we would be able in the sales order click our new spiffy button import action, which is not on the home ribbon. If we were to look at a sales order screen, this will be buried under the actions menu, and I'm sort of okay with that because I'm okay with that for now. We would have a conversation with the user of where would you like this to land. So we are going to have also in our import flexible page, we're going to need an action in here that will execute the import once they've defined all of their columns. So we're going to need an action for the routine to run. And I will once again go back to my action images in the AZAL Dev Tools. I like to have a little bit of a visible icon around, you know, what is going to happen here. So we'll add an action section, we'll add an area processing, and we'll drop this action into the processing section, and we'll call this the run import routine. This one, because we're on a page all of our own, we will set promoted true. We'll set promoted only is also true. Promoted is big is an old naming schema. These days it just kind of sets it further off to the left of any other icons if you were going to have them. So let's give this a caption so it shows a caption correctly. We will call this import, and tooltip, this will run the import based on your column settings below. You guys set real tooltips on all your stuff, right? Right? Okay, so when the user clicks this button, now we need to take all of those column layouts and we need to do something with it. We know which sales order is involved and we know which fields are involved and all that fun stuff. So we're going to create a new little code unit that takes those pieces of info and does stuff with it. For a good governance thing, but I'm going to see if we get into, if we have enough time to speak to, this page realistically should be running against a temporary table, and we would be using this buffer table as a type temporary. We'll just do it. Okay, so let's go to the table and we'll set the table type to equal temporary. Because that way it's per user in the context of when they run it. If they run it again, it's all clean and there's no collisions and all that stuff. So we're going to set the source table on this to be temporary true, all that fun. Okay, so now let's create a new code unit that will be our flexi import. Sure. And all this gets us is an empty code unit, and we're going to create a new procedure called run import, and we will take a var of the sales header, which will be the sales header, and we will also take a var of the let's call this a PTE sales import buffer, which is temporary. And we'll call this import buffer. This is more of an import settings buffer, but we'll take it as a name. It's okay. So, okay, now we've got a code unit that will take the header and will take the settings from the user. If there is no settings in the import buffer here, it means they didn't define any lines. We probably should complain at the user about that. We could put that complaint at the page level up here that this is in the give a user a chance, which if you didn't watch the stream from Europa, where Henrik was talking about, make it simple and easy for users to know what they're supposed to do. Honestly, we could be even clever about things, and this run import could just be disabled if they don't have any settings. But for speed's sake, I'm going to put our checks here in the code unit and just try to run it and see what happens. So we're going to go if import buffer is empty, then we'll throw an error message at the user. You must configure which columns map to which fields, because after all, the field refs and table refs are where we're trying to get to today to talk to, not necessarily pure extension dev. Missing columns. For those who are following in audio, I was just doing the code action that lets me take the string I put in the error message and bop that up into a label, just so that way it'll be picked up by translation engine. Not that we're doing a translation file, but whatever, it's okay. So let's see here. So what we now need to do is we need to import a CSV file, and then we need to iterate through all of the rows and columns of the CSV file. And for each of the rows, we are going to create a new sales line. And so let's mark this up. Import a CSV file. I'm just doing comments of exactly what I talked through, so that way we don't lose what we're doing. Import a CSV file, and we are going to loop through the CSV lines, and for each row, create a sales line for the order, and for each column, validate the values based on settings. Alrighty, so we're going to need a few different pieces. We're going to need a temp CSV buffer variable. which is going to be a CSV buffer temporary. We are going to definitely need a real sales line record. And we are going to need some integers to keep track of some things. We are going to need a next line number for which sales line number we're going to assign at the time. And we are going to also have what I will call a target record ref. And you'll see why and as we dive into things. And we are going to have a target field ref. If you've not used these before, this will be a little strange to you, but that's okay. We'll work with it. So for our very first step, for the temp CSV buffer, we have a helper that we can load data from stream. I'm pretty sure I thought there was a nice little upload helper here. Oh man, I thought, because that would make our life much easier. I thought load data would give us the ability to pop a message at the user. Let's see here. Load data. I thought you were my friend. This has scope on-prem, so that's not our guy. Load data from stream. Okay. Okay, so we take a stream and this field separator. Okay, let me pop open a separate application where I've done some stuff with this before so that we're not wasting any time while I dither around. This is one of the first times in the live stream where I've gone, well, okay, maybe editing would be really nice, but that's okay. We'll work with it. We are going to... I thought this was where I needed to go with this, so that's a little frustrating. Okay. Sorry, everybody. Because I was pretty sure we had a way to do this in a smart way, but that could just be me having a brain, or specifically not so much having a brain at this point in the morning. Let's see here. So I'm going to drop to definition. One of the things that you will find is very, very true in the development flow of things is the more you code things, the more you end up with different handy bits and pieces. Okay, so I believe I just need to grab this from a stream. So we are going to ask the user to upload to stream, and we need a couple of variables to pass that along here. So we're going to need a text variable from file, which will be the file name, and we need an in stream to read the data, and then we are going to come on. Come on. I'm just digging around in a similar sort of code here. So once we've done that process, we then can take the in-stream and goodness. Okay. It would help if my Visual Studio Code I'm using for reference sake would be a little more responsive, but I believe we just take this in stream and I've got my region settings to using comma as my separator, so I will import the selected file, and then yeah, that's pretty much all it is. Good. Okay, so now if you haven't used the CSV buffer before, what this will do is it will create a single record for each line, for each field, with the value in there stored as text. So what we now are going to do is we are going to iterate through for I is equal to our 1 to CSV buffer dot count. What am I doing? If temp CSV buffer dot find set, then if we don't find any records, then we would want to blow up at the user and say, hey, you just imported nonsense. But again, we're a little time constrained, so we'll go with this. So now we can move our comments for each row and column inside of this loop through the CSV lines. So for each row, we are going to create a sales line for the order. Well, if the CSV buffer is by line number and field number, then we don't have awareness of which line we're on in that file unless we keep track of that. So we are going to set the previous line number variable as an integer in our list of things. So previous line number, and if the line number of our temp CSV does not equal the previous line number, then begin, because we now know we're on a new row. So when we're on a new row, we set the previous line number to be equal to our current one, so we can keep track of which line number we're on. And since initially the integer value of previous line number is going to be 0 and the first line number is going to be 1, this will always be true right out of the gate. So that's cool. I am running under the assumption that the user has been trained that they need to delete any column headers out of the file. So we could equally do if line number is 1, skip this row to support having line number column headings. But we're just going to hurry this along because I'm trying to wrap this up in about 10 minutes or so, and we haven't quite gotten to the meat of it yet. So let's see here. So we need to then create a new sales line that we are going to initialize. We're going to set the sales line document type to equal to the sales header dot document type. We are going to set the document number to the sales header dot document number. There are lots of ways this code can be improved. I'm totally on board with that. If any of you are experts watching along with this, hi. But yeah, we need to we're just trying to get to the meat of what we're doing rather than spend too much time dithering around things. Now I'm setting the sales line number to next line number, but you'll notice that I never initialized this. So if I were to do exactly what this says right now, this would blow up, because if there are any existing sales lines, it's going to insert this first sales line as line number 0. So one of our earlier to-dos should be to get this next line number for the sales line should be whatever the last line number is. So something for us to remember to do. And now here's where we're going to get into the real important stuff. We need to tell the target record ref to open up the sales line, and one of the sales line dot number. Actually, hang on a second here. Target record ref. That was what I was thinking of. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a single command I'm looking for. For target record ref dot get table, we're going to pass it that sales line. So now our target record ref should be pointing to the sales line table And as you recall from past discussions of table versus record, it's also pointing to this record of the sales line. So now target record ref is a reference form of being able to work with this particular sales line that we've just created. Just to be thorough about ourselves, we are going to do an insert on the sales line up here first, because we want to make sure that it exists for the purposes of validations. So for each column, we now need to validate the values based on settings. Okay, so we're looping through the CSV lines. So we have in the CSV buffer which field number are we on, and what it means by that is which column, because remember CSV buffer is a grid of rows and columns, so field number on our first one will equal to 1. And what we are going to look at is in that import buffer settings, we're going to look for column 1 and say, okay, what should we do with that? So in our import buffer, set range on column number, and we are going to set the range on column number to be equal to our temp CSV buffer field number, and we are going to do if import buffer dot find first. There's lots of issues with this code, I'm perfectly aware. There are more efficient ways to do this, but we are trying to get wrapped up in the next few minutes. So if we find first and the import buffer dot skip column, so we provided an extra little feature and there we go. We provide an extra little feature to allow the user to say skip this column. So we're going to say for the import buffer, set range column number based on the field number of the temp CSV. If we find a configuration setting for that column number and it's not set to skip, then we are going to set the target field ref to be equal to the target record ref field, and we are going to use as the parameter to that field called the import buffer field number. Now what we have is we have what is referred to as a field reference. This field reference is pointing to a specific field on a specific record of a specific table. And we can do this fun, wonderful validate to that field the value from our import buffer, from our temp CSV buffer, the value. There we go. And I will very inefficiently, but I'm going to do it anyways, is I'm going to call modify true on each and every time I validate one of these fields. Very much the wrong way to do it. There are some better ways we can do things. We would want to up here in the row loop, we would do the modify call before we move off to a new record. So that way we're being efficient. We're not calling modify like 5 times for a single record. But we'll go with this for now because we just need it to be working. And to fix my earlier mention of sales line next number handling, way up at the top before the import is after the import is empty error check, we are going to do a quick check of getting our sales line number. So we're going to do sales line set range. Okay, we're going to do set range on document type to this document type of the sales header. Let's grab you and document number, and then after we set the filters to our document type and number, we'll if sales line dot find last, then next line number will equal to our sales line dot line number plus 10,000. For those of you who are not familiar with auto split key, 10,000 is your guy for the numbers you're supposed to add to line numbers. Okie dokie. So there we go. And we will also do a sales line dot reset just to clean up after ourselves. Okay. So, in theory, now we should be able to create, let me grab a new file right here in this repo of demo csv1.csv. Okay, so we're going to make a little CSV file with some item numbers and quantities, so that way we can test importing this. And come. I just wanted to grab a couple of valid item numbers so we don't have to get into challenges. So 1920.s, sure. Let's grab 1920.s. And we'll say they're going to order 3 of these, and the price on this will be 50. And then in our items, grabbing another one here, let's grab 1896-s. They want to order 1 of these at 100. I don't know why the customer's setting prices, but whatever, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so in theory now we should be able to run this, and a couple of little things in the flexible page. We don't have any code in the on action to call that code unit. And I also would expect that after the import is done, that this little import settings page should go away, and we should be back on the sales order and see the results. So let's do a var on our on action for the flexi import code unit. And we'll, as always, we'll do a clear flexi import. I'm a little compulsive about the clearing on actions. It's probably not necessary because this is scope-wise in the context of this on action button, but hey, I've seen weird things. So flexi import dot run import, and we're going to pass in our sales order, and we'll pass in our rec. There we go. And then after we've run that import, we will do a current page dot close, because now we're all done importing, theoretically. So let's see what blows up. We'll publish this without debugging. Okay, fantastic. And now we will head off into our sales order, and we should be able to do a new one for our good friends Adatum. I don't know. And in our actions, we should now have a flexi import button that imports sales lines from CSV files, and our column 1 is going to map to, and now one of the first issues you see, if you're visibly watching along, we have a table relation on field number that looks at table number 37 and the number 1. The problem here is that as far as imports go, this is this is not looking at the correct whoops doodle. For those of you who are following along, I just goofed up my video because I do use virtual desktops and it hopped me to a different one. So we are looking directly at the field table, which even if we do select from full list, just gives us the table number and the field numbers. There is no listing here that shows us what are the actual fields, name-wise, caption-wise, any of that fun stuff. So what do you do here to make this look a little bit better? Because salespeople should not have to memorize all of their selections and that sort of thing. There is a bit of on lookup magic that we could do, and let's do that real quick because we're running low on time, but it's important when you're working with field refs like this to be able to set these things. So on the field number, what I recommend doing is doing a trigger on lookup, where we will go look up to a different field number. And let's see here. I'm once again, just eyeballing some reference code here, seeing if I can copy and paste anything. Looks like not at the moment. Darn it. Okay, yeah, cool. There is a page specifically for this. So I'm going to copy and paste some code from another function where I'll talk you through it here. Where we are going to call this thing, this procedure I'm making now is called lookup source field, which takes a table number as a parameter and spits back a field number as a parameter. What this does is it looks at the record, the virtual table field. It uses the page called fields lookup. It's specifically designed for this. So we set a filter on the virtual table of fields for which table number. We set the lookup mode for that page to be true. We set the filters on that page to be true. We run that modal to see, the user has to pick a field to work with, and then we can simply say, okay, cool, then we want to run this page to get that info. So in our on lookup here for the field number, we then will just call rec.validate field number on lookup source field, and we're going to pass in a little hard code 37 for the moment. That works perfectly fine. And we'll also rec.calc fields on our field name afterwards. The reason I'm doing a calc fields on after this little validate of the field number is when the user actually does pick a value, we want to make sure that they see the field name of what was involved. Let me see here. Going back to our sales order that we were testing this with, we go into our Flexi import, and now we can say column 1 is equal to, and now when we do the drill down on the field number, we get this list of field name and field caption, which is a little bit better for sure. So we are going to bring in the number field, and we are going to bring in to column 2. This is going to be our quantity. I expect this will blow up because I saw an issue, and those of you following along may have already thought of what might be the issue. And column 3 is going to be unit price. So there we go. Column 1 is field 6, column 2 is field 15, column 3 is 22. So number, quantity, price, and we don't have up in our ribbon here for the sales import flexible, we don't have the action. It's not here. So what's the sitch there? It got promoted into the wrong group. So that happens. If we run import, now we get the manually process import. And let me pop this open in Explorer so I can drag and drop this. So if you didn't know, when you're working with this little dialog where you can choose to import a file, choose a file, you can just drag and drop that onto the choose button, and bam, that is the error that I was expecting. Here it's telling us the standard text does not exist. Identification fields and values code 1920-S. Well, yeah, one of the things that I did not do is this is expecting that all of the lines that we're going to be creating should be of type order. The sales line type should be items. We're expecting items only to come in this import. So we are going to set the sales line dot type to equal sales line dot type item. Bunch of different ways we could be doing a lot of things better, but now you at least saw that it's trying to validate that value into our number field, and we should be just about done, which is good because I've gone a fair bit over my intended time frame on this, but I wanted to do a beginning to end extension example for folks on the stream. Okay, so going back after publishing again, going back to our sales order, we do the Flexi import. We once again do columns 1, 2, and 3, and I did not retain this. I think it's 6, 18, and 22. Field number, this is quantity 15. Okay, so 6, 15, 22. I didn't fix the menu, but that's okay. So if we say import, and we choose, now I'm gonna grab my file again. There we go. Okay, so now after I click the button in our custom page, we can see here on the sales order screen, I now have item 1920S, quantity 3, and 1896, quantity 1. And if we scooch this over to the side, we also see it brought in those unit prices. And it did it just like a user would. It validated each of those fields. So that's the general idea of the record ref and field ref combo, is that you can use a record ref dynamically to point at any table in the system, and you can use the field ref to point to any field in a record ref object. So yeah, there you go. You know, there are smarter and better ways to do this. I might tidy this up a little bit. Let me know in comments on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or anything like that if you want me to clean this up and upload this to GitHub to give an example of how you could do this. You could use this for any sort of side of things. You could, for example, update the type field to be something that is expected in the file or set in the UI of the import routine. You could use this for purchase orders instead and import purchase order lines. There's a bunch of different things that you could do with this for sure. So let me know. All right. Well, we went over by a fair bit what I was expecting, but you know, that was always a possibility. So hopefully that was a help. Okay. Well, a beginning to end extension development on stream. Always a fun, risky gamble of doing things potentially the wrong way. So hopefully that was of value and of interest to everyone. Let me know if you have other areas of the system where you're going, I've seen reference to these things, or I've heard about these things. Please cover at least 15 minutes or 20 minutes, maybe even 30 of the basics of it, so that I can get my head around what are these ideas. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, anywhere you're watching this. Just go ahead and let me know if there's specific things like, hey, I've been hearing about this drop shipments thing. How does that work? Like, any of those functional areas that you're not sure how they work, odds are good I've had to stumble around through it myself. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. We talked a little bit about news. We talked about all of the fun and joy that you can learn from gaming and how to apply that to your business world. We talked about how to be tolerant in accepting payments from your customers. And then we did a start to finish flexible import engine for a sales order using field and record references. And along the way covered a few things like importing things into a CSV buffer, how to loop through all those, and how to do field lookups, and a whole bunch of other core topics. So I hope that got a lot of value for everyone in different areas of things. Try to give it a good mix. I should be back next weekend, and then we'll see how the rest of the summer goes. All right, well, bye for now, everyone, and